Snow White and the Very Angry Dwarf. Once upon a time there was a young girl called Snow White. She was lovely, but the wicked queen was jealous and wanted to get rid of her. The queen's magic mirror told her Snow White was prettier than she was, and she wasn't having that. Snow White ran away. She came across a little cottage. Nobody was home, but the door was unlocked, so she crept inside. There was 7 little chairs around a low table in the kitchen and 7 little beds in the bedroom upstairs. "Oh my goodness!" cried Snow White. 7 darling little children must live here with no one to look after them. The cottage was a mess, so Snow White set to work tidying, sweeping, polishing, and singing so sweetly that all the animals in the forest came to listen. "There," she sighed, "clean as a whistle." Soon after, Snow White heard footsteps outside. "The children are back. Come on in, my little puppets," she cried, flying the door open, only to be greeted by 6 bearded little men. "Oh, who are you?" asked Snow White. "I'm shouty, I'm hairy, I'm hungry, I'm whiffy, I'm sniffy, and I'm jolly," replied the dwarfs. "But who are you?" they all asked. "I'm Snow White. I was lost and I found your dear little cottage, and I'm really sorry, but I went in and I've tidied up and made some food," shouted the dwarfs and rushed past her to tuck in the stew. Snow White told them he had her sad story while delayed. The dwarfs had almost finished eating when another dwarf stormed in looking very cross. His name was Angry. "Who is this?" he shouted rudely. "This is Snow White," said Hungry. "She came to stay and she made us some lovely food." "I'm sorry, Angry, but there is no stew left," said Snow White. "How about some cake instead?" "What kind of cake?" asked Angry. "Cherry cake," replied Snow White. "But I hate cherries," shouted Angry. Then he kicked over his chair and stormed off of the cottage, slamming the door behind him. "Oh my goodness!" cried Snow White. "Is he always like that?" "Yes," replied the dwarfs all together. "He always shouts at me because I'm too noisy," shouted Shouty. "He gets angry with me if he smells anything nasty, and it's not always me," said Whiffy. "He shouts at me whenever I sniff. It's not my fault. Noses run in my family," sniffed Sniffy. "He gets cross with me when my tummy rumbles too loudly," humbled Hungry. "He goes mad just because I sometimes leave hair in the butt," replied Hairy. "And he gets cross with me because I'm too cheerful. It makes me laugh, and then he gets crosser," chucked Jolly. Snow White found Angry outside, bashing a tree trunk with a stick. "What a clever idea to go off on your own when you're angry," said Snow White. "But instead of bashing a tree, why not collect some firewood?" "I'd have a lot of wood," grumbled Angry. "The other dwarves make me so cross." "When they do," said Snow White, "take a deep breath, count to 10, go for a walk, collect some firewood, and when you calm down, tell them how you feel." "They won't listen," said Angry. "They will, if they want some cake," said Snow White. Back at the cottage, Angry explained to the other dwarfs why they make him so cross. "You always sniffling, Sniffy. Couldn't you try using a tissue?" "Okay, I will try," sniffed Sniffy. Snow White helped everybody to say what they thought, and nobody shouted, not even Shouty. Angry said sorry to everyone, and they all said sorry back. Then they had all a group hug, which Whiffy spoiled it just a bit. Angry was about to get cross when he remembered that Snow White had told him. He didn't dare take a deep breath, so he went outside, counted to 10, and walked off to collect some wood. Angry soon felt calmer, but he had collected so much wood that he couldn't see where he was going, and crash! He bumped into an old lady who fell on her bottom, dropping the shiny red apple she was carrying. The apple smashed to pieces, leaving a nasty black stain on the ground. "You clumsy fool," screeched the old lady, whose wig has fallen off. "It took me ages to make that poison apple for Snow White, and now it's ruined." It was the wicked queen in disguise. "We haven't got any apples, but you could have a piece of cherry cake if you like," suggested Angry. "I hate cherries," roared the queen. "I think you should take a deep breath, count to 10, go for a walk, collect some wood, and when you've calmed down, tell me how you feel," Angry calmly replied. The wicked queen didn't appreciate Angry's advice, so she stomped off in a huff. Snow White and the other dwarfs came out to see what all this shouting was about. "Oh, Angry, thank you," cried Snow White. "You got rid of that nasty wicked queen and you didn't even lose your temper." Then she gave him a big piece of cherry cake with all the cherries picked out. Snow White and the 7 dwarfs went back to the cottage where they lived fairly happily ever after, and they never ran out of firewood again.